This episode is brought to you by Viagra, crafted directly from Medusa's bathwater. No, it isn't. I'm sorry. That's a lie. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
You're late.
Tabletop gaming. It's an addiction that costs a frickin' fortune, and one that will inevitably lead to tons of spiky clutter around your house. Today I'll be talking about why you shouldn't participate in such a... What's that? Not that kind of tabletop fun? Then what the hell are we talking about? Oh no, it's this one. Oh, gross. You madman. You crazy people. Who wrote this plot? Who put this on the air? Paul Lieberstein, apparently, the animal. I imagine him either being a massive perv who watches ultra porn at the office, or, is perhaps a put-upon working man that was handed down his marching orders from the Führer King himself, Michael Judge. Okay, look, this is the episode where Hank sees his mother having a stank, nasty super slam on his kitchen table and goes blind from the horror, okay? It's finally here. We finally have to talk about it. Ugh. I thought it was important to address this horrible fuck sex right away since it dominates the episode and is really just, shocking as hell. But if you'll take this dance with me in the pale moonlight, let's take a moment to actually think about what is happening in the context of this scene between these two people in this moment. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more I think about the functionality of this, the more I become just angrier and angrier. What's the opposite of titillated? Livid. Yes, I become livid when I think about what is actually happening here. It's a wooden table, you're both over 60, it's unhygienic, it's definitely gonna mess up your back for a couple weeks, and Hank's mother, guess what, even has a bed that she's staying in the other room. Like, what are you thinking? Why on the kitchen table? It makes just no sense here. I'm not against the concept of old people having sex. If you've made it that far and you still feel capable of doing it, then you're a goddamn legend. But why on the table? I guess this was just a like, take me now moment, but there's some freaky people on this show, I swear.
Oh, this is kinda nice. And they smell so much better than jock straps. Maybe to you.
It's such an iconic moment, one that is still burned into my mind's eye even all these years later. There is just something about those puckered lips quivering in delight that is supremely distressing. Ugh. And the way the shot is framed, with us just seeing glimpses of it, makes the whole thing feel pretty anonymous. Like that could be anyone's parents going down Catheter Causeway right there. So there, I discussed it. All of the folks who just clicked on this video to hear about the old people having sex can now get the heck out of here and go back to hanging outside the bushes around the Sandpiper Retirement Crossing home, or whatever they do. For the rest of us, we have to discuss how this episode manages to take two very different concepts, that being wacky holiday troubles and the mystery of Hank's supposed blindness. It's crazy how well those two ideas get mushed together. Oh wait, fuck, I said mushed. No, don't show the clip again. No. Please, let's just start the review already. We begin with a serene view of the neighborhood and everyone putting up their wonderful holiday decorations. We quickly learn that Hank's mother is flying into town and that Hank hasn't seen her in over 2 years. And in that time, she's gotten herself into a new relationship, and is bringing the guy along, much to Hank's chagrin.
Give this guy a chance.
Why, he's just gonna use her like a footstool like Dad did.
Rub-a-dub-dub, I think I'm in love.
Now, we could say that Hank is being weirdly overprotective of his mom. I mean, she did divorce Cotton at minimum 20 years ago, so, she's been single for a while now, but I think that just speaks to the unspoken trauma of his youth. When you have to see your parent being yelled at, demeaned, and borderline tortured on what I am certain was an almost daily basis for years, then you're probably going to relive a little bit of those negative feelings when the circumstances seem to be repeating themselves.
Oh, great. Look, she's carrying both of the bags, and he's nowhere to be found.
I'm embarrassed to say that it took me years to get the joke that the reason why she's carrying their bags is because Gary has a, quote, enlarged heart.
Do they carry suitcases in his family, or does he think that's woman's work like Dad did?
Oh, Hank, Gary's nothing like Cotton. He's got a big heart. Of course, now the doctors call it enlarged.
Gosh, I can't believe I never connected the dots there. That is so weird. I thought it was just like a funny little misdirection, but I never really pinned down what the mislead was until like just now. That's crazy. Anyway, here he is, Mr. Gary Kasner himself, voiced by the legendary Carl Reiner, father of Rob Reiner, who lived to the ripe old age of 98. Carl, that is, he lived to be 98. Rob Reiner's still alive right now, although he might get there, who can say? God, imagine being over 70 for 28 years. Life is truly so very short, but also so fantastically long. My goodness. Now I have to say, I really like how Gary is written in this episode. He's such an obviously kind man, always quick to laugh, and someone who takes Hank's snide remarks in stride.
I never heard of an eye sympathetically shutting down.
I've got a magazine you ought to read. It's called The 10 Commandments.
Who's he talking to? Hank, you want I should come over there?
And because Gary is such a warm and loving person, it's obvious that Hank's problem isn't with the man himself, but with the change he represents. This would have happened to anyone Tilly brought home. If Gary were a big jerk, then Hank's distrust wouldn't come off as so delightfully petty and small. The episode completely hinges on making Gary as likable as possible. Everyone else embraces Gary, especially Bobby, who eagerly eats up Mr. Kasner's mannerisms.
You I like.
You said you I like instead of I like you. That's funny. I like that. Wait, that I like.
I've gone blind.
Oh, good Lord.
Blindy's gone now.
Ah, isn't it nice that this was a more innocent time? One where Gary, who is basically just a complete stranger to the hills, could be shown having a sleepover in Bobby's room without it being inherently concerning. Oh, and you know what else I really like? I adore these outfits that Gary and Hank's mom are wearing. These little, like, matching jogging suits. They're so cool. They're so 90s. It's very, like, Mall Walker-esque. If I was loved, I like to think that it'd be fun to wear something like that with someone. Yeah, that'd be nice. Oh, wait, that almost brought up my pain water. Quick, distract the audience with Peggy's silly pronunciation of menorah. For God's sakes.
I was thinking of picking up a menorah so we can celebrate Hanukkah and make Gary feel at home.
Ah, so good. Frustrated with having to balance Gary and his eventual trip to Cotton's house for Christmas, Hank comes out into the wee hours of the morning and is almost brought into a conversation addressing the elephant in the room. Thank goodness distracting TV comes in to save the day.
This is my program.
And I just ask you, Father, to take this man's hiccups to heal him.
Oh, you believe in this stuff?
Yep, that's right. It's my favorite thing.
And speaking of spiritual beliefs, I should probably note how the episode is very, very mild-mannered when it comes to the subject of Gary's Judaism.
So, he's Jewish.
Yeah, Dale, he's Jewish.
There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself.
If anything, I think they played it pretty darn safe here. Compared to the scathing treatment they gave to the Supernuisanpones, this feels like they're tiptoeing around joking about the subject, at least when it comes to this scene with the guys. Which, I mean, I don't know how well I would be able to craft a tasteful joke on the subject, but I just thought I'd mention this sort of like odd sort of feeling of hesitancy. Which is made even weirder when you remember that Carl Reiner was one of the most legendary Jewish comedians ever, so it seems odd that they didn't, like, I don't know, invite him into the writer's room and say, "Hey Carl, we need some good Jewish jokes. You got any memorable ones?" Okay, you know what, actually, now that I say it out loud, maybe that wouldn't have been the best of ideas. I mean, it was already probably a pretty big ask just to get him to come on the show and do the voice talent, to then say, "Hey, we don't know how to write Jewish jokes. Can you help us?" Okay, that probably would have been a step too far, but whatever. Okay, fine. Now that I've sort of worked out the problem out loud, I think maybe this episode turned out as it should have. Thankfully, we later get this hilarious emotional misdirection from Cotton, who once again displays his powers of identification.
What's he selling?
Oh, that's just the guy who drove me here.
Gary Kasner.
Kasner! Happy Hanukkah!
But for now, the Hills are headed to an 8th grade basketball game of all things, kind of random, which gets us this unexpected burst of energy from Luann.
Let's go, let's go! If I miss the tip-off, I don't know which team is going for which basket.
God, I love her so much. But now I have to say, one of my guiding principles for doing these reviews is that I try really hard not to nitpick every little line or tiny inconsistency or little animation flub. Like, I'll bring them up here or there, but I try really hard not to make it the focus of these reviews because I feel like that kind of thing can really overwhelm the review and really just sort of distract from the really important things like character and plot and story structure and all that. But what the fuck is going on with this line with Luann? She won't know which team is going for which basket if she misses the tip-off? Have you ever even watched a basketball game? The teams are going for the baskets all the time. It's pretty clear, like, oh, the gold team is going for that basket and the purple team is going for the other one. Like, what are you talking about? Miss the tip-off? Like, that is just such a weird nonsense joke. Like, I get the whole thing is that, Luann is really stupid, or something, which, okay, I don't think Luann is really stupid, but I guess we just gotta throw that in there since that's what we want to do with her character now, I guess. But just, like, what? What does that mean? It's so weird and just, I have to say, a really weak joke.
Mom, you're not dressed. Didn't somebody tell you 4 of Arlen's players made regionals?
I think I'll pass.
Fine, whatever. I'm just saying an 8th grade like this comes along once in a decade.
All would have been excellent, would have been perfectly fine, except, oh god, they have to turn around because Peggy, the fuck up, forgot to bring the right foam finger, the one that has both the number 1 on it and the basketball. And this is when, much like the time that Peggy saw Bobby macking on that beauty school head, Hank wanders into a life-ruining scene. Behold the dreaded moment of truth, the hot Carl Reiner.
My eyes. I've gone blind.
Now, I don't know about all you guys, but I personally put all of the blame on this, like, whole crazy incident squarely on Tilly for this nastiness. From what we'll see in a later episode, she is an extremely selfish parent, one who is pretty darn neglectful towards young Hank, and who never stood up for him or herself, which is fine on its own, I suppose, whatever, but then she expects Hank to do what she won't and stand up to Cotton.
Oh, I wouldn't mind Cotton's rantings if Hank would just stick up for me.
I'll help you with your dishes.
Mom? Mom, what should I do? Mom?
Something I think is really important to note here is that Hank says, "What should I do?" He's not asking his mom for help, he's just asking for guidance. He would restrain his father if he thought it was the right thing to do, but honestly, he doesn't know. And I can't really blame him. I used to think that Cotton was just somebody who abused his family emotionally, but in this very episode right here, he punches Hank in the gut, his blind son, just bam, right in the stomach. So why wouldn't he have a problem hitting his, like, child version of Hank? Or his son, rather. And by the way, I just want to say about that incident, I was really thinking about this during my rewatch. Gary witnesses Cotton hit Hank and doesn't say anything. How weird is that? Like, Gary will jump to Tilly's defense, you know, if you badmouth her, then I'll kick your ass. Okay, whatever, but you just saw him hit, like, Hank. Like, I watched it very carefully. He stands right behind Hank and just watches the whole thing happen and doesn't say a damn word. What's going on with you, Gary? What is happening here? Are you just under Tilly's spell? Ugh, I never noticed that. So weird. I fucking just... Ooh, I hate Tilly so much. She brings out the worst in people. My goodness. Gary, and by extension the rest of the cast, really deserves better, damn it. But yeah, after seeing those two do the horizontal monster mash, the graveyard smash, dare I say, Hank's vision goes completely bye-bye.
Hank, is something wrong? You look very strange.
Well, I guess I'll have to take your word for it. I can't see a thing. I've gone blind.
Is it funny that his eyes are not only drawn super small, but also going in different directions? Yes, of course. Could they have come up with a different way of showing that? I don't think so. Regular eyes wouldn't have worked, and making them tiny would have just been weird. Their total discombobulation is what makes this thing really sing. It is such a great visual gag, you just have to stand in awe of it. It is such a smart choice. And keeping with the smart decisions, much like the time Hank was constipated, when Peggy learns that her husband's gone frickin' blind, she goes into caregiver mode, which I think is a really overlooked quality of hers. I would trust her to take care of me personally. I think she would be great.
Will you do something? What are all these machines for? What about that laser right there? Use that laser on my husband right now.
All right.
You know, we're really starting to get into the super good episodes now. The ones where I'm tempted to just wax poetic about all of the jokes and every little tiny detail that just makes me smile, man.
What if somebody saw something really, really wrong? Could that affect someone's vision?
Was something out of place, something where it shouldn't be?
Did you open the microwave door before the ding?
This doctor, for instance, his world-weary attitude is just, so perfect, so, like, self-contained and brilliant.
Someone can see something so horrific, like, say, a brutal murder, that sort of thing, that they actually lose their sight. Yeah, I got a couple of books on it. You take them, I don't need them.
In the TV landscape, there's always this sort of unspoken rule that you have to make the characters as loud and memorable as possible just to keep the audience so dazzled by wacky sights that they don't lose interest and flip to a different channel. I can just picture some swarthy TV executive going, "What do you mean the doctor just says okay? Why don't you make him weirder, give him a sexy assistant? Oh hey, maybe he's a homosexual. That'd be pretty funny, don't you think? And by the way, make him flaming." Thank goodness King of the Hill is brave enough to trust that their audience is invested in what's going on, and can trust that what is being presented, even if it's more subtle, won't go unnoticed. It takes a lot of guts to believe that this boring character will land well, and gosh darn it, does he ever.
The key to getting better will be to confront what you saw and deal with it. Unless, of course, you poked yourself, in which case, when you're ready to admit it, you can come back, and I'll fix you right up.
And as I'm talking about all this, please remember, I'm trying my best to keep these videos as tight as I can, but it is really hard. I don't want to turn this into a clip show or a mega essay, but God, I just love this show so much. On the way back home, Peggy manages to squeeze the truth out of Hank and has pretty much the same reaction that I would have if I learned that someone was doing that on my table.
How would you feel if you saw your mother on the kitchen table in the arms of a 65-year-old man wearing nothing but a submarine tattoo?
I eat breakfast on that table.
And from here, my goodness, do the writers ever get a lot of material out of Hank's blindness. It is actually kind of insane. From the guys taunting him, to the disastrous Christmas gifts, to the way he uses Ladybird as a guide dog, it's all just so good. And most ridiculous of all, he's forced to use the foam finger, the catalyst for this whole mess, the thing that caused him to go back home and witness what caused him to go blind in the first place, as a half-assed mobility cane. That, my friends, is brilliant. Look upon him, my friends. Oh, how like foolish Oedipus Rex does he move through this world, that poor blind motherfucker. And the hits just don't stop coming, as Hank gets a very nasty little surprise in the car, courtesy of his wife, Jocasta. I mean, Peggy Hill.
Every block we put between me and the kitchen table is a load off my mind.
Amen to that. Now, where am I going?
Huh? What? Peggy?
Gosh, I really want to say that this was a dick move, but, you know, it was Peggy, and she did only do this to help Hank try to get over his psychological issues, and I do really love her, so you know what? I'll forgive this. It's all just washed away. And it's easy to forgive her little scheme, since it does bring Gary and Cotton together, which is a magical pairing if ever there was one.
I served with one of your tribe in the Pacific. Name of Brooklyn. You know him?
I know a Joe Brooks Stein.
That's him.
Even though Cotton is barely in this thing, he just, oh man, brings an extra little sparkle to everything he touches.
I'm in visiting with Tilly. Just thought I'd help out.
Tilly? My old Tilly? My sweet God. Is she still around? She was too old for me 20 years ago.
It's dynamite, really, just the way he's so naturally able to bring such mean-spirited joy to the audience. Oh, it is so good.
Still blind, huh? Or are you faking?
Oh.
Well, either you're blind or you're slow. I'd believe both. What's he selling?
Let's give some big credit to Hank here, though. He took that punch like a champion. Imagine suddenly getting decked in your gut, totally unaware and off guard, especially when the other person has time to wind all the way back and give you a solid clock from their low-to-the-ground shoulder. That is just, ooh, such a, pivot right to your belly. Hank is one fucking tough dude. And while we're on the subject, Gary proves the strength of his love for Tilly by standing up to Cotton, which is always a good way of demonstrating how resilient someone is. Kind of like how they threw every big bad guy character at Worf in The Next Generation, except King of the Hill is actually smart enough to know that you should only do this sparingly, kind of like how they did it in the Justice League animated thing, where they threw all of the bad guys ever at Superman and they all beat him up, which then makes Superman feel really weak, and the same people people have a tough time fighting Batman, so because, like, everyone has a hard time fighting Batman in that show, it's like, oh, is Batman actually more capable and strong than Superman? Like, what's going on? Like, I like the Justice League cartoon thing. It's pretty fine, it's pretty well written and all that, but if I was going to review any series, I would review the Batman animated series, because my goodness, I have to give a lot of praise for how that show actually shows, like, a very human sort of Bruce Wayne. Like, yes, he's Batman, but he's not freaking invincible. He gets hurt, he's scared, he's all this stuff, and that just, makes it shine.
I don't know what year she told you she was, mister, but that odometer's done rolled over.
If I catch you talking like that again, I'll kick your ass.
All right, I'm backing down. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
I don't know if you can tell, but Gary actually rules. In fact, he not only goes so far as to take Hank to the faith healing tent that Hank pretended to believe in, but also pieces together what's really going on.
You saw me and your mother in the kitchen. I'm not flattered that it made you go blind, but obviously it's something psychological with you.
This is when Hank, and by extension the audience, comes to understand that Gary truly loves Tilly with all of his enlarged heart. This isn't just a tawdry form of lust, this is true blue, baby. His love is so expansive, so enormous and great that anyone who is important to her becomes important to Gary, which is why he put himself into all of these uncomfortable scenarios. Imagine the courage it took to stay with a family that you've never met, to suffer the barbs from a clearly unhappy son, to then take that same son to your girlfriend's ex-husband's place and bring him to a place of faith that is not your own. Gary is almost supernaturally patient and kind, but people like him do actually exist, and when we discover those people, it is so important to cherish their warmth and grace. That whole sexual act in the kitchen is rendered a moot point in the face of such a titanic feeling of love. And I'm not ashamed to say this, viewers, but the scene where Hank finally accepts Gary as a father figure did actually, it really got to me. I did tear up a little bit on my rewatch. It is just, whew, God, it is such a beautifully crafted moment.
Hey, no fair. I didn't see you coming. Okay, got your jollies by now?
Is this man your son?
I'd like to think maybe one day.
Yeah, well, I guess that would be an all right way to be thinking.
Man, that gives me chills. It really does. This has got to be one of the most hallmark endings ever. It is so genuine and heartfelt that they couldn't have done it better. And best of all, they decided not to close the episode with this big, like, aw moment, but instead gave us a nice chuckle instead, a real after-dinner mint of a joke.
Man, ain't good with that dang old stick, man. Even though walking like he can see again, man. Like, ain't kind of looking old Pookie, man. He ain't got a sight, man. Run! Get out of here!
What a whimsical way to end things, a very boyish conclusion to this holiday special. So how was their very first Christmas/Hanukkah episode? Well, I gotta say, it's a real treat, but besides the hardcore sex scene, I kinda struggled to find things to say about it. And by that I mean it's a tough one to critique, as everyone is just like, I don't know, really nice to each other. I don't know, how do you review an episode that's essentially just a bunch of scenes of people, like, wholesomely hanging out? It's, I don't know, it's a very, very laid-back episode. Even the blindness aspect feels very easygoing, as no one is treating it like this horrible or like crazy life-changing event. Everyone knows this is temporary, even the characters themselves, so it doesn't really provide much content for me to comment on. This would have been a much different story if they were pretty sure that his sight wasn't coming back, because then the guy's jokes would have come off as downright monstrous and would have provided me a lot of stuff to say like, oh my goodness, what are they doing? Whoa!
Bring, phone for you, Hank.
The joke's on you, funny man.
I'm tempted to say that this whole thing is too sweet for its own good, but with how much conflict and strife that we get from other episodes, I don't have a problem using this as something of a palate cleanser. On its own, though, I don't know if I would pick this one up to get a lot of laughs. But then again, I'll happily take this big glass of sugar water over the bitter brew of the final few episodes, which, I have to say, one of them got rid of Gary for seemingly no reason. And I refuse to believe that they did not have the budget for Carl Reiner to return, or that his schedule, his incredibly old man schedule, was just, I'm sorry, too busy to squeeze in King of the Hill. But that discussion doesn't matter. That shit show of an episode is far, far in the future. Who cares? Right now, in this serene moment, we are allowed to bask in the easy dream of a happy hill home with dear hearts and gentle people.
Hey, Hank, what am I thinking? You can't see. You can't see what I'm thinking.
Absolutely stunning work. I cannot believe they were able to have that sex scene in there and create a beautiful holiday message about loving your family. Platonically, of course, platonically. 10 out of 10, Paul Lieberstein, I may have given you some guff at the start of this review, but now I can only stand in awe of your work. I really struggled to find anything to critique. What a master of your craft. Bravo! And just to keep this spirit of delirious sex alive, I think it's time we took this party to a saucy puppet show, starring everyone's favorite King of the Hill characters, the Manger Babies. No, I didn't say that right. Luann, could you help me out here? How do you say Manger Babies?
Manger babies.
Terrific, terrific. But that's for next time. For now, we can say that this episode, outrageously titled The Unbearable Blindness of Laying, has indeed been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And I promise, somehow I'll make the Manger Babies episode fun. I swear. I just gotta figure out how. Don't skip the episode. I promise it'll be good. I swear. Goodness. Ugh. Okay, see you later.
I like them flat. Press harder.
Peggy. So, okay, who wants to make cookies?